touch with them. So the Toronto one is through us here called Net Tuesday. There's one in Montreal. They're all over the place. And they're events just like this with very similar focus. And the next nonprofit tech events we have coming up, right, so there'll be a webinar on crowdfunding, so maybe of interest to people who are here to learn about crowdfunding today, on Thursday from 12 to 1. Again, if you come by the website and click on learning resources or talk to any of us after the presentation, we can help you with that. And then the next Net Tuesday will be pitching for nonprofits, so if you want to bring your elevator pitches, we will let you know if they are up or down. If you just go back one. And just some quick logistics. So there is free wireless. The one you want to join is CSI Guests, and there's no password for it. If you want to tweet about it on Twitter, it's Net2TO. The recording of the webinar and all the slides and the PDF itself will be available for download after the event. The food is there and it's free, and you should enjoy it because we really enjoy sourcing it for you. And just a quick note, because we're on the first floor tonight, there are numerical codes for the washrooms. One for the ladies, one for the fellas, so we've got it up there. The washroom is just that way, so if you go out and to the left, that's the code you'll need to get into it. And if you forget it or you want us to write it on a piece of paper, let us know, we're happy to do it. So now that we all understand each other a little bit better, oh shit. Okay, so it's not the button, it's the side. Oh, we're gonna do this one first. Or actually, should this be first before the intro?
That would be first.
Okay. So to do a little intro, we just like to remember, if you can, your name, the name of your organization, and why you're interested in crowdfunding. So we've put you guys into tables and groups in the hopes that you will get a chance to network with each other. So if you wouldn't mind, if you want to grab your name tag and all your information and have a chat with the person next to you and let them know why are you interested in crowdfunding, and we'll come back to you in just a few minutes and we can get started with Mr. Charles. Any questions? Okay, go, do it. Dino. Okay, so I don't want to interrupt anybody's stuff. Let her finish her sentence. We're just waiting on them to finish. Okay, if you guys are ready. Get some money. Okay, so glad that we've all had a chance to introduce ourselves to each other. And now I'd like to take a second to introduce to you a man who inspires me every day with his dedication and his class and his smirk, which is quite a lot of fun. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to meet my friend Christopher Charlesworth.
Thank you very much, Jess, and thank you to all of you to come out and brave the rain, which was rather torrential early on. Thank you for being here today. Thank you to all of you who are at home on the live stream. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to, once we switch over, I'm going to do my best for the next 45 minutes to about an hour to communicate to you all that I know about crowdfunding, to try to give you the key information that you need to know in order to harness this trend of crowdfunding. Now, our organization, HiveWire, we've been in the crowdfunding space. We started about actually almost closer to 5 years ago now in crowdfunding, probably 4.5 years ago. And at that time, when we would say crowdfunding, people would look at us rather blankly, and they really weren't aware of what crowdfunding was. And now, of course, we're into quite a bit of a different time. Most people have heard of crowdfunding. Most people are aware of at least the major platforms like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and now people are starting to see crowdfunding rather than as a curiosity, but rather as a tool that they can harness for themselves, for their organization, for the project or the services that they're looking to deliver. And what is fantastic about crowdfunding is that it really is a meritocracy and a tool that you can access and that you can take advantage of. Literally everyone in this room has an equal shot at raising significant amounts of money through crowdfunding as anyone else. So what I would say is, for any of the material that I'm going to cover tonight, if you have a question at any point, please feel free to put up your hand and ask. If anyone at home has a question, please feel free to type it into the chat window, and the TechSoup team will alert me to that question, and we'll be able to get that answered as well. Now, I work, not only am I one of the co-founders of HiveWire, but we are also ambassadors for the National Crowdfunding Association. The National Crowdfunding Association is our industry body. We have I think it's over 1,500 members or something crazy now. All across Canada, we have representation. We work with the provincial government, we work with the federal government, we work with market regulators to try to encourage the widespread adoption of crowdfunding or the liberalization of crowdfunding rules. We also do set standards for crowdfunding, and we work with market participants as well to try to ensure that crowdfunding operates fairly and efficiently and protects investors within the Canadian space. So if you do have a question about crowdfunding, literally even if it's a question from far left field, I'll probably be able to address it in some way, shape, or form. If I don't know the answer, I'll let you know, and I'll take it down and try to find the answer to the question afterwards. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about us as we're getting started. So our HiveWire team, I co-founded HiveWire with Asir Nia. He's a good friend of mine. We've been childhood friends, literally best friends since we were like 7, 8 years old. He was working at the Canadian Space Agency. I was working as a management consultant for Direct Energy down in the States learning all about the electricity markets. He wanted to go and do a master's in renewable energy. We said, hey, this is a great opportunity to do our business, to finally do a business together. We tried to apply crowdfunding to renewable energy, And at that time, about 4.5 years ago, what we found were that there were not the rules, or there was not the regulatory environment to allow for that kind of fundraising activity to happen in Canada. And there's an important lesson there, which is that crowdfunding is still a developing tool. In fact, there are certain kinds of crowdfunding which we're just on the cusp of being legalized within Canada. I'm going to talk about some of the new developments that are occurring within the crowdfunding space and as they pertain to nonprofits and charities, and also to Ontario specifically. Moira Klantz-Warwick, she does a bunch of our finance stuff. Arthur Prevost moonlights with us as our data scientist. And Chris Olison is our CTO. We used to head up all the websites for the University of Waterloo. Now, today, what we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be presenting to you findings from our recent guidebook that we created in partnership with the Center for Social Innovation. We wrote a crowdfunding guidebook specifically for the nonprofit and charitable sector. This project was paid for and sponsored by ESDC Canada, a department of the federal government. This guide is for you, for the community within Canada. You can find that guidebook here, bit.ly/ESDC strategy guide. It's a free download. The guidebook is really quite substantial in length. They were interested in a 25-page guidebook. We delivered I think it's 44-page guidebook. There is literally everything that you need to know about crowdfunding in that guidebook, right from the very beginning all the way up to detailed or advanced strategies, tips, and tools. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to be pulling some key information from that guidebook and sharing that information with you. So that's a good URL for you to have. For those that are at home, I think they can see the slide, so feel free to download that. We'll put that up, that link up again at the end of the presentation, so just make sure if you miss it for some reason, feel free to check that out, or talk to us and we can get that to you again. So, whoops. Okay, so what is it that we do at HiveWire? There's sort of actually three principal things that our organization does. We started developing crowdfunding platforms. In fact, our first project was called CSI Catalyst. Some of you may remember. It was a one-year project, a crowdfunding platform for nonprofits and charities here in Canada. We had about 25 projects through. In the end, about $140,000 raised for nonprofits and charities and individuals trying to make the world a better place. Really, really exciting. It was our first crowdfunding platform. After that, we built our second crowdfunding platform for an organization, a nonprofit called the Toronto Fringe Festival, which is, they're based in Toronto, an alternative theater arts festival. We launched that platform probably about, I think it's about 16 months ago. There have been, since that platform launched, we have had literally hundreds of crowdfunding campaigns. Over, I think the last tally I looked yesterday was like, I think it's like $330,000 or $335,000 raised. We've been very excited about that platform. We've now expanded it to all the Fringe festivals in North America. We added US campaign functionality. It's been very successful. Now, the reason I'm telling you about that is that at HiveWire, we have built crowdfunding technology from the ground up. So in fact, our first how we came to crowdfunding was from that technology basis. We were observing right from the beginning what was happening at a transactional level with regard to crowdfunding. Now, we do a lot of public speaking about crowdfunding, and sort of, probably about 1.5 to 2 years ago, we noticed that some of the things that we were saying about crowdfunding, best practice, and excellence didn't match up with what some other people were saying about crowdfunding best practice. So we were like, this is a conundrum, because are we right and they're wrong, or vice versa? So what we started to do was build out a crowdfunding database that aggregated crowdfunding campaigns from across the internet and from across the world. We started with about, in our first database, about 7,000 crowdfunding campaigns. Now we're up to about 500,000 crowdfunding campaigns, which represents about 40% of the world's rewards-based crowdfunding activity. And we mined that database for insight about crowdfunding excellence. So the information that you're going to see in the guide today and the comments that I'm making come from that data-driven perspective. We're very much all about looking at the data and performing analytics on that data to try to understand how to be successful, or what's actually happening with regard to crowdfunding. We still do exit interviews with the campaigns. We've worked with well over 30 different crowdfunding campaigns now, big to small campaigns. The largest crowdfunding campaign we worked with was one called Bistro. It was a crowdfunding cat feeder, literally a digital cat feeder. When you're not home, you can through your phone. They were looking to raise $100,000. We worked with them. They were able to raise in the end over $240,000 for their crowdfunding campaign. Really, really exciting crowdfunding campaign. And so we've definitely been in the trenches with individual campaigns, as well as done the data, as well as built the technology. So that's sort of the perspective that we're bringing. So feel free to ask about any aspect of crowdfunding today. So it's really important as we get started, though, to recognize that crowdfunding is a subset of crowdsourcing. How many people here are familiar with crowdsourcing? Anyone know? Okay, can anyone give me an example? What's a favorite example of crowdsourcing, an organization that's doing some kind of interesting crowdsourcing? Yeah?
Would it be GitHub?
GitHub? Yeah. Okay, GitHub is, GitHub is like the great success story. I'm getting warm and fuzzy as you're saying GitHub. So GitHub being an online repository where people can host their code and other people can review that code and comment on it. Really, really exciting resource, 10 cool points for GitHub. And so GitHub's strength is the crowd. They've created a tool that the crowd can use. They have a place where people can come, they can contribute, they can share. Really, they're sort of the definition of community, and they've been hugely successful for that. I encourage you to recognize that crowdfunding is just one part or one piece of the puzzle. It is an excellent tool for you to use to fundraise, but bringing a mindset of crowdsourcing, of recognizing that you can open up and invite the participation of the crowd, create that kind of that magic and that synergy with the crowd to create increased value, shared value by engaging with the crowd. That's a really sort of added value way of thinking. That's a really something to hang on to. So there are many different types of crowdsourcing. There are crowd voting, crowd labor, crowd creation, lots of different things. Crowdfunding is just one piece of that puzzle. As we build crowdfunding platforms, we work with organizations to pull in the right web-based tools in order to marry crowdfunding and other crowdsourcing tools with the strategic objectives of that organization in order to accomplish your goals. So try to think holistically, try to think about what your end goals are, try to think outside of the box for some of these different tools. So crowdfunding, one part, crowdsourcing. Questions about that? Okay. So good. Okay, so when we were building out our crowdfunding guide, the ESDC crowdfunding guide, we didn't just sort of just look at our own research and data and information. We created a comprehensive stakeholder engagement process in order to consult with nonprofits and charities to find out what they thought about crowdfunding and what their experience had been with crowdfunding. So we interfaced with a whole number of different whole different number of organizations. We held workshops and surveys and the whole bit, and that all came in to work its way or wend its way through the crowdfunding guide. So one of the key things to highlight are some of the different basics about crowdfunding. So we all know about the two main types about crowdfunding in terms of the donation and rewards-based model. Are you guys familiar with both of those different types? One of the interesting pieces in our data has been how, if you think about rewards and donation, that the donation part sort of correlates with that idea of altruism, right? People are going to donate to us because we exist, because we are making a difference in the world, we are fighting the good fight, right? Rewards-based crowdfunding typically falls into the what's in it for me category, right? What am I getting back? What kind of reward, what kind of piece am I, are you going to give me a t-shirt or product or experience or whatever have you, but there's something that the contributor is getting back. Can anyone guess, of those two, which one is the more successful at contributions? The kind of straight donation, the altruism, or the what's in it for me? What do you think? How many people think that the donation model is most successful? Okay, and then how many people think that the what's in it for me success? Okay, you got, oh yeah, okay. So the crowd is correct. The data shows us that the what's in it for me, what am I going to get back, what gift, what experience, what's in it for me, that is far and away much more successful in running a crowdfunding campaign in terms of the contributions, the actual dollar number of contributions that people are going to get back. Now, that's not to say that you can't have a successful donation-based campaign. Absolutely, you can. In fact, there have been many, even high-profile donation-based campaigns. They've been for, in Toronto, there was a recent shooting. A child died. They raised huge amounts of money for that. It was a great cause and very, very worthy. But when we look in aggregate at all of the campaigns across those two different types, the what's in it for me type, the rewards-based crowdfunding campaigns, those are typically the ones that are most successful. Now, in looking at the data set, I was saying earlier that we have a database of 500,000 or over 500,000 crowdfunding campaigns. For this particular guide, we actually dug into that database and we pulled out 27,000 nonprofit campaigns. And so the information, some of the information that's further on, pertains specifically to that subset, those 27,000 nonprofit campaigns that we analyzed. Of those campaigns, we had, I think it was 1,400 that were Canadian specific campaigns. And so those insights are going to come from that data set. Yeah.
Did you specifically sample them, or were they all random, so they're just tended to represent the whole group?
So we took them as a complete data set. So we didn't extrapolate and say that 27,000 is, even though we know, of course, that 27,000 are a small subset of the global population of nonprofit crowdfunding campaigns. But we looked at them just in their entirety as a particular data set. So we would like to run that more robust global analysis at a later point. There have been sort of two impediments to that. One is we're still working on pulling in the world's crowdfunding campaigns. Got to start somewhere. 500,000 campaigns is where we're at right now. And the second thing was, in fact, this analysis that we ran was really a bonus for the federal government. There was no budget in there for research or additional research. We just based on we already had this data set, and so we were able to analyze it for this particular effort. So does that make sense and answer your question?
Oh, I was just hoping for the sampling technique, just to know what the 27,000 was. Was it just randomly sampled or not? That's right.
Yeah, no. So it wasn't random. We were able to. What was great was we were able to reach into a subset of our larger pool that represented all in this case, all Indiegogo campaigns, and from the start of Indiegogo's campaigns. So this is literally a full data set that reaches back from 2008. Those campaigns already came with a campaign flag where nonprofits were able to self-select and say, yes, I'm a nonprofit, and they flagged themselves, and so we were able to easily pull that out. Now, in looking at global campaigns, we can actually use like natural language processing, and we can identify when crowdfunding campaigns are nonprofit campaigns, even when they are not specifically tagged, like on Indiegogo. But that was more work, so that was out of scope for this particular effort. But it still represents quite a large pool. In fact, for us, we haven't seen any comparable analysis, so we think that this was new. But anyway, there we go. So anyway, so in the context of this guide that you're downloading, this guide has actually been focused on donation and rewards-based crowdfunding. At the time that we wrote the guide, and the time when we had to deliver it for the government, just like 4 weeks ago, their equity crowdfunding, which is a form of crowdfunding where someone can have an ownership stake or a claim on future cash flows, either through a share or a debt security, equity or debt security. That type of crowdfunding was not yet, for the vast majority of Canada, was not yet legal. So that was out of scope for this particular guide. Since that time, I wasn't joking, things have moved very quickly in the world of crowdfunding. there have been a number of changes, and I'm going to touch on what those changes are and how they're relevant to nonprofits at the end of the session. So, does that make sense? Good? Yeah, question in the back.
So I wanted to know about when comparing and contrasting the two different types of crowdfunding. Would you guys do that across every type of crowdfunding, or is that nonprofit specific? And also, did you guys analyze like how large the reward had to be in order to?
Yeah, very, very good question. So, did we look at, essentially you're saying, did we look at all categories for crowdfunding? Yes, we absolutely did, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that with the different crowdfunding categories. And then the second part was, did we look at the different reward levels? Yes, we did indeed look at the different reward levels. So that trend of the reward-based crowdfunding being much more successful holds true across categories and different reward levels. It was a clear.
For the nonprofit space, altruism still didn't motivate people as much as reward.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if you think about it, people are still getting something back. Even when they give, doing lots of charities, when I give to Greenpeace, and like, I'm still getting something. I still feel like, hey, this is making a difference. Or maybe I get the T-shirt with the Greenpeace across. Or maybe I, get a
tax receipt.
Sorry?
Tax receipt.
A tax receipt. I might get a tax receipt, and that could be a major bonus that's back. You're a thinking man. That's good. Yeah, totally. So it does hold true. Very good question. Okay, so let's continue. So what was really interesting when we looked at this particular data set was we saw that nonprofits comprised in this particular data set. We think that this will be broadly representative, but we'll hopefully be able to do a more fulsome data analysis of the world of crowdfunding as we continue to build the data set. But of this data set of 27,000 crowdfunding campaigns, what we saw was that they comprised, roughly about 8% of all of the crowdfunding campaigns. So roughly about 8% of the crowdfunding campaigns. But when we look at the total amount of money that has been raised, we saw that it actually comprised about 60% of all funds raised. So what that meant was that nonprofits are raising greater than their particular share of the market. So of the total count of crowdfunding campaigns, nonprofits are raising a disproportionate amount of money relative to their percentage of the market. So that's very encouraging. That means that nonprofits are being successful with crowdfunding. In fact, we saw that of the total data set, nonprofit campaigns have raised over $91 million in pledges. That is a not insignificant amount of money. Of course, that's still spread out over those 20-odd thousand crowdfunding campaigns, but still in terms of total amount, that really is a very, very significant amount. So I would encourage you as nonprofits and charities to take crowdfunding fundraising seriously. I'm kind of preaching to the converted. You guys are here, so obviously you're taking it seriously. But does that make sense? That difference? Okay, awesome. And then the other thing that we saw though was that when we parsed it out over time, when we looked from the beginning of that data set from 2008, and we looked over time, what we saw was that the participation rate of nonprofits in crowdfunding is actually accelerating. So. This probably looks more clear when you see the hockey stick, but if we were to lay it out in that hockey stick way, you can see, you would see that proverbial, really increasing growth. And that's important because it means that nonprofits are participating, in that hockey stick, that exponential growth that we're seeing within crowdfunding more generally. So definitely rapid growth in this fundraising tool. We expect that this fundraising tool will become a standard for nonprofit crowdfunding. Okay, so back to your earlier question about the breakdown of the different categories. What was really interesting was, before we looked, we were thinking, well, I wonder if charities will be more heavily focused in just theater, or will they actually be participating in other areas like technology? Where will those campaigns be? And so, what we see is actually a pretty good distribution across most of the different categories. So, certainly, community, education, health, are the largest categories, but we still see areas like film and art, religion. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So there are lots of different sectors that crowdfunding campaigns, or pardon me, that nonprofits are participating in. So when we look more generally at crowdfunding, what we see in the market is that, quite literally from our vantage point, we see all of the innovation that is in whether or not it is in technology and hardware, in software and consumer packaged goods. Literally every category that you look at, the innovation is happening within crowdfunding. It is the safe, or we say, why is that? We think it's because it is the safe space for innovation. It is the safe space where people can try new things, where they can take a chance on new initiatives that wouldn't necessarily ordinarily get funding. When all of you are filling out those funding or grant applications, there are probably, there are some very specific lines that you have to color within. But with crowdfunding, those lines really don't exist. You can really try out a new idea or some kind of new innovation, and we encourage you to do that, to look at the tool as that safe space for innovation, regardless of which category you're going to be presenting in. Or going to be going in. Okay, so this is just looking at taking that data and parsing it out across Canada. Of course we see, or not of course, but we're interested to see, BC, Ontario, and Quebec being the leaders for crowdfunding activity for nonprofits. In this particular case, that does match the larger data set. In terms of Canada, we're working with the National Crowdfunding Association on a more robust Canadian specific analysis for crowdfunding more generally. But certainly being here in Ontario, there's lots of opportunity. Toronto is a very, very strong crowdfunding market for you to gain supporters. Okay, so key factors of success. This is something that we've seen. Really, we were talking about some time ago, but really has been true, we think, for the nonprofit sector as well as for crowdfunding more generally. But we've seen this really for large campaigns and small campaigns, and it really bears repeating. So when you're looking to do your crowdfunding campaign, these 4 critical factors of success have really proven to be absolutely key. You really do want to start with a quality idea and have a pitch that you can put forward that's going to be clear, memorable, and compelling. If someone doesn't understand what your crowdfunding pitch is in the first 30 seconds, you probably need to work on your pitch. If you don't have a good idea to begin with, then a crowdfunding campaign, even with all the best marketing, is not going to save you, right? So what will happen is the market will give you validation or not. So it'll let you know if it's a good idea or not. That's the great thing about crowdfunding, sometimes a bit embarrassing. You have to market your campaign. You really do have to have a good marketing plan in order to communicate about your campaign. When we look at our data set, what we see, and this is a really interesting point because we build crowdfunding platforms, but what we see is that most of the supporters, the vast majority of the supporters that are delivered to your crowdfunding campaign, regardless of crowdfunding platform, come from your own efforts and your own network. Or more importantly, when the magic happens, the network of your network. All right? So it doesn't matter if you are on, the best whiz-bang crowdfunding platform, literally whatever crowdfunding platform you can think of. That part is really single-digit percentage points in terms of the overall impact of your campaign. The majority of the backers will come from your own efforts, not from the crowdfunding platform. That has led to some really interesting situations. We've seen more and more campaigns, more and more organizations do crowdfunding through their own website. So we certainly can help organizations do that. If we've seen more and more organizations successfully crowdfunding and hosting on their own site under their own brand, and then having access to additional or incremental data and information about their backers that may not be available with a limited data set that some crowdfunding platforms will share with them. Right? Sure, you might know how many donors, sure you might know generally the geography, but are you able to register and track the IP address of the people who are contributing to your campaign or visiting your campaign page? You need to have a very strong network to make sure that you can share or execute your crowdfunding campaign, and you have to have the magic, enticing rewards. People have to, again, coming back to that what's in it for me piece, you have to make sure that people want that particular those particular rewards that you're offering. Now, regardless of the platform that you're on, you have to make sure that the contents of your page are going to be attractive, are going to be interesting, and are actually going to get across what it is that you're doing. When we work with crowdfunding campaigns, one of the things that we now are doing with all of the campaigns that we work with is doing crowd testing on those campaigns. So before we launch a campaign, we will literally go through an iterative testing process where we will not only test with smaller groups that we pull in, essentially like mini focus groups, but we will also test different concepts live on the web in order to see what sort of traction, uptake, or interest these campaigns have. Can anyone guess why would we do that? What are we going to get out of it when we go through that testing process? What's the benefit of doing that kind of testing? Yeah, in the back.
It's going to be optimized for help the person raise the most money possible, because you're going to see what people are responding positively to and negatively.
Absolutely. So,
Conversion rate optimization.
exactly. So we're going to do optimization. That's the key word. We're going to optimize the campaign, right? So we've worked with crowdfunding campaigns. I remember for one, and they were participating in one of the workshops that we do, and they actually cut 2 different videos with 2 different tones. And so they were a nonprofit, and they were one tone, they were sort of related to war vets, and one tone was really upbeat and positive, and the other was somber, right? And so we tested, in that case, in the case of the workshop, this example, against those 2 different tones, and got feedback from the group. And it was really fascinating to see how that one resonated much more strongly than the other. Both were good, both could have been passable, both could have literally served as the basis for their crowdfunding campaign, but one resonated significantly stronger than the other. So you definitely want to go through and do that testing process. Don't trust yourself, don't just trust your team. Find individuals that are of your particular target audience. Who is it that is your target donor? And then literally test with them. This is a pain, this is harder to do. We're all time starved in the whole bit, but when we're talking dollars and cents for your crowdfunding campaign, this can literally mean the difference between having a middling campaign that raises like the average $4,000 to $6,000, or a campaign that is going to raise tens of thousands of dollars. So definitely do your homework with regard to that. When you build your particular campaign, make sure that you understand why it is that people are actually supporting your campaign. So Dino?
Yes.
Dino earlier pointed out, I should be wearing a name tag too, pardon me. Dino pointed out that a tax receipt, right? That's something that people are definitely looking for. But really, that might be one of just a broader set of particular value drivers, right? Earlier, I gave the Greenpeace example. I'm identifying with, oh my God, we need to save the world, literally. So what is it that what can we do about that? But for some other people, they might be supporting your campaign simply because it's funny. Maybe it's entertaining. Maybe it's engaging, right? Then, and it's just something that is worth $5 or $10 contribution for your campaign. So try to really go through and understand what it is about your particular audience. What are those specific value drivers that you are touching on in your campaign, or that are relevant and interesting to your particular target audience, right? What resonated in the past campaigns that you did? Who are your typical supporters? And really, where this comes from is going through the exercise of doing at least a very simple or cursory customer segmentation, right? Pulling your customers together in groups, identifying what those sort of shared ideas, values, characteristics are, and then trying to identify, why would they end up backing you, and then putting those things into your campaign. Weaving those throughout the narrative of your campaign, through your campaign story arc, through your particular key messages, and most importantly, in your rewards, the thing that's what's in it for me that they're going to be getting back. So now, there's another key thing that we put on the side here, and I know it's a little bit small, so I'll talk about it, which is we were really surprised to see over 98% of nonprofits and charities choosing the keep what you raise campaign types. Now, typically, regardless of the name, regardless of which platform, most platforms offer you the opportunity to either have an all or nothing campaign or keep what you raise, all or nothing. If I had a 30-day campaign and I fall $1 short of my target at the end of that 30 days, then I get nothing, right? All or nothing. Keep what you raise, if I only raise $50 out of my $100 target, by the time that the timer expires on my campaign, I can keep that $50, right? So, it kind of makes sense that most campaigns choose the keep what you raise campaign type. But when we analyze the success of the crowdfunding campaign types, how many people think that keep what you raise campaigns are the most successful type of crowdfunding campaign? Kind of hinting at this. Okay, how many think all or nothing campaigns are the most successful? Yes. Yeah, all or nothing campaigns, in fact, are like significantly more successful. I mean, like literally written at the bottom there, like more than 2 times as successful as keep what you raise campaigns. Like this is by a wide margin. Can anyone guess why that is? Why would all or nothing campaigns tend to be more successful than keep what you raise campaigns? What do you think? Anyone guess?
Because people are concerned about you and they feel like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, if they don't get all this thing and those poor kids.
Yes.
So it's like, they got a couple bucks, who cares?
Exactly. They care, they're concerned, and I think the emotion you were doing was communicating was urgency, right? There's a certain amount of urgency, right? If the shot clock expires and you didn't get the basket, like that's it, right? You do not get anything, and that really could really hurt, right? That would be unfortunate. And so it turns out that urgency is a very motivating factor for you, for your organization, and also for your backers. It lets everyone know where it is that you stand. So that urgency is really important. Also, it helps to de-risk the campaign, right? So does anyone here in the room have a campaign that they know they're going to be doing? Does anyone have an idea? Okay, so what is your campaign?
On September 9th, we're going to be launching a campaign. We haven't picked the platform yet.
Yep.
We're probably going to set a target somewhere around like the $20,000 range.
Sure. What's your campaign about?
We are raising funds so that we'll be able to deliver a new innovative workshop.
Yes.
In grade 10 civics classes.
Cool. Okay.
And it's all about getting youth to take on environmentally responsible behaviors.
Awesome.
And there's a new approach that's all based on the psychology literature.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so civics class, environmentally responsible, focused on high school students, right? So really neat workshop that's delivered. As you're saying this resonates with me. There's not enough civics being taught to high school students. I have a nephew who's in high school right now, and I asked him, do you have civics? Do you learn about that? No, I'm like, do you learn about civil disobedience? They're like, no. And I think it's really important, not civil disobedience, but being able to participate adequately in a democracy. So, so that could resonate. But your raise, the target, what was the number that you wanted to raise?
$20,000.
$20,000, right? It's a moderately big number, right? $20,000 is a moderately big number. And maybe in your campaign page you talk about how many workshops you want to deliver. Maybe you want to deliver 100 workshops, and you want to deliver those workshops across Canada, so there's travel costs that are involved. You want to develop materials, and so I know that you need $20,000 to deliver that workshop. But if I give those funds to you, and it's in the first week, if you fall short, then if you do a keep what you raise campaign, I'm thinking, well, okay, you're going to keep my funds, but you're not actually going to deliver on the workshop, right? So there's a risk with any crowdfunding campaign that you might not come through. By having an all or nothing campaign, I know that at the very least, if you don't raise that money, I'm going to get refunded those funds. So for your backer, it can also help to, I say de-risk. My finance professor would cringe because you're not actually de-risking the project. It's the same amount of risk as there. You're just chopping that risk up into manageable pieces so I can hold my bite-sized piece of risk and know that I can get a refund if you don't hit your target. But that piece is definitely measurable, it's perceptible. We hear it from backers as well when we do our research. So we strongly encourage you, because of the data, based on the data that we've analyzed, based on the success rate, we strongly encourage you to consider doing an all or nothing campaign raise type, we know it's scarier to do that. Okay, there was a gentleman here who had a question. Andrew.
Yeah, it's just your last slide. Technically speaking, what do you mean by test your campaign? Like, I don't quite understand.
Yeah, for sure. So, so going back to sort of testing your campaign. So this is a sample. This is just like a mock-up campaign type. In the guidebook, we wanted to start right from the very basics, and we go right to advanced strategies in the guidebook. So that's really helpful for your organization. If you have board members or you have other people who have never had any experience with crowdfunding, there are components that can show them like exactly what crowdfunding is, what all the different pieces are, why they are there, and there's associated descriptive blurbs that go with each part. But when I was talking about testing your campaign, what I mean is you could, for example, mock up a campaign page type, right? So I could, for example, create a campaign page that says, School for Civics for high school students. Civil disobedience is not the way. Okay, so I just created value for you by creating a little bit of a funny byline, right? That's the kind of, you want to create that kind of value. I could then come up with put a picture or do a sample rough video of what my campaign was going to be like. Literally, I could shoot that on my iPhone and have people from my organization stand in order to pilot what the campaign was going to be like and come up with sample. And then turn around and show that campaign page. Literally, I could put it up on the web, on my own server or somewhere else, or use prototyping websites, and show that to other people and find out, hey, what do you think about that? And I could do that for free. I could post it on Craigslist and pay people to review that campaign. I could stand out on the street and ask them. However you do it, you want to get people to review that campaign, literally to take a look at it before you've put it up live to the world to accept donations.
How much, what is the size of your sample you're testing?
Yeah,
Is it related to the amount you're crowdfunding? Like $10,000, we should test 50 people, 20,000, we should test 75. Is there a relationship?
Yeah, good question. So the question is, what sort of threshold should you look at? How big should your testing sample size be against the campaign raise? To be perfectly honest, at this point, we would just be happy if campaigns would test at all, right? So even if you test a little bit, that will be a step forward for the best practice right now within crowdfunding. When we're working with our campaigns, particularly our large-scale campaigns, we will test somewhere between 25 to 100 people. We will try to test against get a sample of people who are representative of the target audience that campaign is looking for. So very good question. Okay, so all right. So when we're looking at rewards are always a big question that people have. What rewards should I have? I put the T-shirt up there. We use that as a kind of an inside joke because T-shirts somehow seem to be the proverbial reward, the thing that people always think of. What should we have as a reward? We should have a T-shirt. Quite honestly, T-shirts they might be very valuable. All right, you can make a T-shirt be valuable. For example, I have a T-shirt that is a Run DMC T-shirt. Right? For those who may not know, Run DMC was a rap group back in the 80s. Time has come that I have to say that. I fortunately got this T-shirt. I saw them perform one time, and I stayed afterwards backstage, and I got Jam Master Jay to sign that T-shirt. Right? Yeah, I know, pretty good. I should actually put that up in my condo. But anyhow. So that T-shirt is very valuable to me, right? Because this individual, this famous individual, has signed that T-shirt. That has increased the value of that T-shirt. That's a really simple way to increase the value of a simple reward or giveaway. With any of your rewards, you have to think, how much value am I creating for the people that who are going to contribute to my campaign? And I'm going to come back to that value creation piece. The key part, though, here is to recognize that there are all different kinds of rewards. You can give recognition. For example, I was doing a workshop and I made a joke about someone, if a campaign sent out a tweet, if I contributed to that campaign, and Justin Bieber tweeted out, hey Chris, thanks for your contribution. And someone in the room literally had a connection to Justin Bieber, and they were trying to get that as one of the rewards for their campaign. Stranger things have happened. So, recognition can be a key thing. Getting VIP access, backstage access, getting people in to see something or have access to something that they wouldn't ordinarily have access to. One example, not far from the Tree, which is a nonprofit here in Toronto, they had a crowdfunding campaign where they got former Mayor David Miller to do a celebrity fruit pick. So you could literally go with him and pick fruit with David Miller, and it's sold out incredibly quickly because he is a VIP. Offer particular services, unique experiences that they wouldn't have access to. For example, there was a nonprofit that was doing raising for solar cells for a solar installation, and the reward they were looking at was to allow people to come and help build and assemble the solar cells, right? A different experience that most people wouldn't have access to. So when we look at campaigns, earlier we were asking about campaigns, what's in it for me versus those that don't, that are straight donation. What we see is the campaigns that are offering those rewards typically raise over 3 times the amount of total funds. Over 3 times the amount of that's a significant number. This is based off real data, not anecdotal. We see a 22% increase in the success rate of those campaigns, and we see almost 3 times the number of backers for those campaigns. So that's a really good, hard data for you to take a look at. Alicia? Yeah. Alicia, yeah.
I had a question. It's more of getting your opinion around, I guess, what you would consider like the quality of what your reward is. So, this is the only one that's coming to mind, which is probably not the best example, but when De La Soul was crowdfunding for De La Soul was a rap group. When they were crowdfunding for their next album, they put up rewards, which I don't even know how much that was necessary, but some of them were like keychains and it wasn't
swag.
Yeah, it wasn't quality stuff. And I understand that that's different because they have a lot more currency in the market than say most of the people here. But I'm just wondering about the quality. Is it just about having something?
Okay. Very good. So Alicia was asking for the rewards. Is it about quality? What is it about the particular rewards? And double points for mentioning De La Soul. It's good. I'm going to listen to them later. When you're doing your crowdfunding campaign, sort of what matters with the reward. And I can tell you that, we have seen rewards that are everything from nonsense, like potato salad, to really complicated, like you're buying a really high-end robot that has facial recognition, all this kind of stuff, right? So there is the full spectrum of rewards. The only thing that matters with a reward, literally the only thing that matters, is the perception of value that is created for your contributor. The only thing that matters is the perception of value that is created for the contributor. And I say perception of value because we all value different things differently. I recently gave to a crowdfunding campaign, at first $50 and then another $100. So I contributed $150 for virtual spaceships, because those create value for me. Other people on the internet think that is nonsense. And that's fine. So it's just about the perception of value. For me, that was valuable for this video game. I'm going to talk about it later. For other people, maybe not so much. So when you're doing your crowdfunding campaign, you need to look at your organization, what it is that you're doing, and what your campaign is about, and then try to think outside of the box about how to generate value. Now, how do you get to the valuable rewards? How do you actually get there? Every single crowdfunding campaign that has valuable rewards had to brainstorm, had to test, had to iterate their ideas in order to get to value. Way back, when everyone looks at the iPhone and they're like, oh my God, the iPhone was so great. But everyone forgets the very first, Apple's first foray into phones, which was the Motorola, was it Razor? I think it was the Razor, right? Anyone remember that? And it was the worst. It was a colossal failure, like colossal failure. And you had that phone, okay, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, apparently it didn't really work, right, very well. But anyway, so, but after that, they were able to, iterate and get to the real value and uncover what that value is. And so that process of testing, that process of iterating, that process of brainstorming, you have to go through. When we work with organizations, we will literally take them through that process. We will break up the sticky pads, we will bring them in, we will brainstorm, we will take them out, we'll do something else, we'll come back, we'll go through that whole process. I encourage you to do that in your organization. Don't be discouraged by starting with the bad ideas. You have to start with the bad ideas to get to the good ideas in order to build value with your rewards. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, there was a question in the back you had.
Oh, I was just going to ask if there was one particular type of reward that tended to work better, but you kind of answered my question by saying kind of like strategy.
Yeah, so is there one particular type of reward that comes that works better? I would say no, and I'm gonna highlight some campaigns at the end that'll sort of show that. Okay, so just to come to some practical. That was all. Oh, sorry, I did double click. There we go. So to come to some practical things for your rewards, talking about it, we did some natural language analysis, frequency analysis on the words, the kind of rewards that the campaigns, that successful crowdfunding campaigns were using. We put together this lovely word cloud, and so you can see that some of them are like thanks and support. We're giving recognition. Some of them are actual things, tickets, cards, performance film, love, coffee mugs, media, cast. Really, the key takeaway here is they all fall into these broad categories. The key part is the relevance to you. The name thing is interesting because I think this is where you're giving people, including them, giving them sort of custom recognition in some way, shape, or form for their particular, for your particular campaign. But really, I encourage you to be creative. Crowdfunding works best with creativity. Yeah.
So, could you just get a little bit more about the name? Like what does that look like exactly?
Yeah. So there is a bit of a grain of salt here because we've done a frequency analysis on the words that were included in the rewards of successful campaign. So name came up quite a bit, and we think that has to do with giving some kind of named or custom recognition in some way, shape, or form with something in these different categories. So we think that part resonates very well. So either your name on the plaque, your name in the credits, your name in something, your name, right? That piece for the name. But having said that, it's not a definitive analysis, so we would have to do more work to definitively look at that. But that's far less important than the main key takeaway of fitting into those broad different categories and seeing that successful campaigns fit into those broad categories. Okay. So, marketing your campaign was one of the really key things that you need to do. So people always ask us, what are the things that you actually need to do in order to broadly market your particular campaign? When you have people coming onto your campaign, you want to make sure to ask them to do something. You want to ask them to share, you want to ask them to visit, you want to ask them to champion your particular campaign. So one ask for one person may not work. Someone may not give money, but they may like your campaign enough, may cross that threshold to share it with their particular network. Some people might actually care enough about your campaign that they're super enthusiastic, sort of super donors who donate to your campaign, share it on social media, comment on your campaign, and are emailing you every week, and they're like, this is the best thing ever, right? Those are the people that you want to reach out to and have a role for them and say, hey, would you like to volunteer for our campaign? Would you like to find those supporters, build them, and create space for them within your particular campaign. When you're marketing your campaign, you want to make sure you want to plan your campaign, you want to get organized, you want to make sure that you're going to work in advance of your campaign to coordinate your messages, to make your life easy. You want to write your campaign, your key messages in advance. You want to gather up your network, take all the individuals in your network, pull them together, gather them up, assess the quality of your network, build out your network in advance of your particular crowdfunding campaign, and build a communications plan to go out for your campaign as well. And we talked a bit about customer segmentation and testing as well. So when we found, sorry, I keep double clicking. When we found, when we were talking about and researching for this particular guide about executing your campaign, we really found that there were sort of these three broad categories that needed to happen. You need to make sure, and this is something people often forget, while your campaign is running, you need to listen very carefully. Appoint someone on your team to listen to what people are saying about your campaign, right? Either the donors, people out there on social media, the places where your campaign are actually happening. Make sure that you examine your campaign strategy in the midst of your crowdfunding campaign and tweak and pivot as necessary to understand, are you doing something right or wrong? And if you're doing something right, you want to capitalize on what that right thing is. And it may be that you didn't even know that the thing that is resonating with the crowd was the thing that would resonate with the crowd. So you really have to understand that or listen to try to uncover that very early on to try to emphasize that within your campaign. In the guidebook, we've listed a whole series of different campaign roles that you might want to consider. The number one that you definitely don't want to be without is a campaign manager. Even if it's someone from your team that you donate, you have to have at least, you really want to have one person in charge as a focal point for your particular campaign. After your campaign ends, that is not the end of the work. You need to continue to do work on your campaign. The post-campaign can really be the make it or break it for the reputation of your campaign. If you raise $20,000 for your efforts, but then you never deliver a program to all of those high school students, people are going to have some questions or concerns, right? So you have to make sure that you follow up, that you thank the people who contributed, that you engage with them, and that you communicate transparently. If there is a hiccup in your campaign, be open about it. In fact, enlist the crowd to try to help you solve problems that may arise. Now, this is an interesting part. What were some of the lessons learned anonymously that we found from nonprofits that have engaged in some of them, successful campaigns, other ones rather spectacular failures. But most people forget how much time is involved. Most people forget that it is a very significant investment in order to earn or raise the funds. You really will be earning those funds. A lot of people afterwards, this part around testing came up. Oh, I wish we had checked. If we'd actually just put it in front of the right person, then we would have known. That testing piece, the planning and testing and iterating, are really critical, and we saw that come up time and time again. Make sure that you don't forget the details. Your shipping costs, your, even if you've gotten quotes from suppliers for something that you're going to do, for materials, for particular work that people are going to do, make sure that you remember the tax, you remember the shipping costs, remember all of those different details, get those laid out in as much detail as possible. And the last one that is in bold, I think, is probably one of the most critical for nonprofits, which is make sure that your organization, that you've communicated clearly to everyone in your organization, especially your board, especially the decision makers, to understand that you are embarking on this crowdfunding effort. There's nothing worse than getting partway into your campaign and having a board member call up with some very credible reason as to why your campaign either needs to be changed, or you missed the messaging, or you might anger a donor, whatever. You need to make sure that you've included that, and go through a process of education with your team. Set up meetings, talk to them about it, distribute the guidebook, make sure everyone knows what it is that you're getting involved in. We've included a campaign execution checklist. These are just some of the headings from that checklist, but are some really good steps around your team, around your task management, around making sure that you are leveraging appropriate sharing tools to keep everyone on the same page. There are a whole number of different communication tools that you can use to get your message out there via social media, or to aggregate conversations that are happening online. And there are also a series of different popular crowdfunding platforms that nonprofits are engaging with, several of which are Canadian based as well. So we've put a number of fact sheets in the back of the guidebook that you can cut out that really summarize a whole number of specific tools and approaches that I think are going to be really useful for you in summary format. Now, at the beginning, I talked about how things are changing in Canada for crowdfunding. So, what we've seen just about 2.5 weeks ago, we had a number of different provinces, BC and Saskatchewan and Manitoba and Quebec and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia all came out with an agreement for equity crowdfunding rules. Again, equity crowdfunding is where someone can give you funds and then have a claim on future cash flows, basically where they're going to get a financial return back through either an equity or debt security. So literally a bond or a share in an organization. So they came up with these different rules, and they said that in a given year, an organization can raise up to $250,000 from the crowd under these rules in a single offering, and up to a maximum of $500,000 in a given year. Now, these rules are sort of were their initial press release, initial summary rules. How these are going to actually shake out in practice is still remains to be seen. Now, this is still relevant for you as nonprofits, as there may be an opportunity to do a bond issue through these exemptions within Canada. And I say may for a number of reasons. Number one, I am not a securities lawyer, so it's important for you to get good legal advice and accounting advice on leveraging these exemptions. Number two, in Ontario opted out of these rules. They're going to be releasing their own set of rules in the fall, which will have, they've said, will have a $1.5 million cap instead of the lower $500,000 cap, but will require or have higher registration requirements for the platforms that will allow organizations like yours to do this. So this is important for you to be aware of, important for you to keep your eye on, because it may mean that if you need financing to buy a building, if you're looking to buy resources, if you need to hire an executive director and you're going to have cash flows that will come in at a later point, then this tool may be an option for you. But I would say it's still a developing topic. You still want to keep your eye on it. And most importantly, you still want to get legal advice, with the caveat that many lawyers are still learning about this as well, because it just came out 2.5 weeks ago and caught everyone by surprise. So, does that make sense?
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, yeah.
Because bonds earn interest. That's kind of breaking the definition of non-profit already.
Well, very good point, and I'm going to jump ahead to two different points, to some of our case studies. Excellent segue. To some of our case studies on bonds. So as you may or may not know, these are 3 organizations in Ontario that have used a community bond structure. So the Centre for Social Innovation, SolarShare, and ZooShare have all come out with community bonds, which are debt instruments that that earn interest, where you can place funds with those organizations and earn a financial return. In fact, just about 3 weeks ago, ZooShare, they want to build a biogas, like a digester for all the manure that comes out of the zoo, comes out of the animals for the zoo, and then we'll digest it and create electricity from that waste product. They just raised over $2 million. SolarShare, they've paid out over $3 million. They've raised several $1 million more in bonds. And the Center for Social Innovation, just today now, they've just in the last little while, I think actually the last week, 2 weeks, they crossed the $4 million that they've raised through a community bond structure. They've already previously raised over $2 million to buy another building. So that idea of nonprofits using debt instruments that pay a financial return is really actually gaining traction and gaining gaining additional use. The important part here is these exemptions, these bond these bonds are under a different form of exemption. These have been under, I believe it was FSCO, the Financial Services Commissioner of Ontario. I believe it's FSCO. Do you remember that? Anyway, okay. But they were under a different category than the other bonds, which have been under the securities commissions for those other different provinces. So what we have is this interesting situation where the technology allows us to gather and aggregate funds from the crowd, and even return those funds back to the crowd. But the legal framework that they operate underneath is sort of, developing, I guess would be the best way to say it. So, but the key is for you to recognize that there are these instruments available. If your organization does think that it will have access, to a regular stream of cash flows. So, ZooShare, they're going to be selling power, so they'll have the zoo will be paying for that power. SolarShare, they have people who will be also in this case buying that power. And with Center for Social Innovation, they have organizations like TechSoup and others that pay rent that will then give them a return. If your organization does think that it will be able to generate a regular return, almost like a social enterprise, then one of these different instruments might be for you, either under equity crowdfunding or under community bond structure. Does that make sense? Any questions about those two? Yeah?
So what's the risk of?
Yeah, so what would be the risk? So the risk is that when you create a bond, so for example with SolarShare, when someone holds a solar bond, they have an expectation that they're going to get a 5% return on their investment. And if SolarShare does not deliver on that, then there are some very specific legal repercussions. Essentially, the corporation is at risk. The assets of the organization are at risk. And so there could be a claim on those assets if they default on paying that financial return. So in the same way, like if you have a mortgage for your house and then you stop paying the bank back, the bank may foreclose on your house and take that asset. So all of these instruments will have some kind of underlying asset that is secured against. That's part of what makes the equity crowdfunding kind of a bit different, because these are going to be higher risk because there may not be a robust asset or set of assets that underpin the investment. So we'll need to communicate that to the investors that they're very high risk instruments. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to touch on were some other different examples of some of the other crowdfunding campaigns. And this kind of comes back to that earlier point in the back that you made about the type of rewards and also the value that the reward creates. So, we've seen some very successful rewards that are based on tangible products, right? For example, the proverbial Pebble watch that everyone knows about in Canada, where you would actually get a physical watch. The spaceship example that I talked about earlier was for a video game called Star Citizen, which I'm very excited about. Hopefully it will come out in the next year or two, and is an online massively multiplayer role-playing game, which last weekend raised, originally they had raised about $2.5 million on Kickstarter. Last weekend they crossed $83 million in funding for those lovely virtual spaceships that I was talking about, earlier. So the key part about this, why these are relevant examples, is that if you create enough value for the customers, even if it is intangible virtual spaceships, which are just bits and bytes in a computer, there is an opportunity for you to raise truly substantial amounts of money. Again, crowdfunding is a meritocracy, so you really have that chance to do it. One last outside of the box example, in Rotterdam, I've used this I think before, this is an example of where there was a community that was bifurcated by a roadway, and the city wasn't going to put in a bridge for like 20 years. The community got together and they did a crowdfunding campaign. They've raised several €100,000. Actually, sorry, this number is way low. They've raised now several €100,000 and are building a pedestrian bridge where they sold one sort of plank at a time, for €125, and people can get whatever message they want on that plank or section of planks. That's a really novel way to create value for people. You can put a message to your loved one, or you could put your company's name, and that raised funds for their particular mission. So, and that's for literally an infrastructure project within a community. So I really do encourage you to think outside the box. So that was all the presentation. So now we have time for questions. In the back, yeah. Oh, yeah. Are we going to get these slides? Yeah, we can totally distribute these slides. I'm going to leave that to TechSoup to do electronic distribution, maybe SlideShare or something like that.
Yeah, you don't want them.
So good. Okay.
Yeah, so actually.
Okay, last two questions?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, question?
I was just curious if you could vouch for a specific platform. I guess Kickstarter is the most popular. And then you were just saying the spaceship GameStar, I forget the name of it, but they raised X amount of millions on Kickstarter, but the way you phrased it, it sounded like they had multiple platforms going, and we didn't quite discuss that, but is that okay for nonprofits to do? Like, could I go on like a charity-only crowd platform, but also do Kickstarter and other, like, is that a normal thing, or should you just do one?
Yeah, very, very good question, Andrew. So Star Citizen had started off on Kickstarter, but then moved to do crowdfunding on their own platform. So they literally were fundraising directly and are continuing to fundraise directly through their own website, and that's really important. They've proven out the model that fundraising can happen to truly astronomical amounts through your own platform. So do we, as HiveWire, recommend a particular platform? Not at all. What we say is look for the features that are going to suit you best, and then go with a platform that's going to fit those particular features. It is far and away more important to build a robust campaign, a campaign that resonates, a campaign that creates value for your contributors, than it does matter if you are on Indiegogo or From Can or any of those. Like, you really want to choose. You really want your campaign to be the focus. Going on another campaign can be a great way to dip your toe in the water. If your organization is going to be doing substantial campaigns, substantial rounds of campaigns are going to continue, then I would say start to consider looking at your own platform for additional features. Yeah, gentleman in the back.
Yeah, I was wondering, so I work for a charity, so I'm wondering, I've seen things such as perks that raise this sum of money and this will allow us to do this sum, or donate this amount, and do this amount, and do this. Is there any value in something like that?
Yeah, very good question. I think what you were asking is pertaining to almost like stretch goals, where you have banded goals for your fundraising.
So yeah, total raw goals and individual donations.
Yes, exactly. So should you include those stretch goals? Should you tier your efforts? That can be an excellent tool for building motivation and building momentum in the campaign. And what it allows you the opportunity to do is to have a very practical goal that you're trying to reach, but also offer the kind of wild and crazy stretch goal that, if we could raise this crazy amount of money, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? And sometimes that can be very motivating and engaging to the crowd. One quick follow-up with the other gentleman, you never want to split your efforts simultaneously on multiple platforms. That's a very important thing. You always want to focus your efforts and drive your crowd to one particular place. Okay, there were two other questions. Okay, yeah, in the front.
On Patreon, you can get people to donate on sort of like a continued basis. So have you looked at any data where you can actually engage and draw more funding from people because it's sort of like a monthly draw? And so if you could just comment on Patreon.
Sure. So this comes back to that part about recurring donations, right? So do you, and some platforms offer that functionality. What I would say is what we've seen, particularly on the donation side, and have also heard from the campaigns that we worked with and the research that we've done, is that donor fatigue, as you all know, is a really painful thing. And now, where does donor fatigue come from? We believe that it comes from a lack of creating ongoing or continual value for people. If you continue to create value for me, I will continue to give you money and or funds. If you do not, and you're still continue to ask me for funds, well, after a while, I'm going to grow tired of being always asked for a handout. So that piece around saying, if you're going to have recurring donations, what value are you creating for people on an ongoing basis? That's an important thing. For example, how many people here have a Netflix account? Go ahead. Okay, amazing. All of you are paying, what is it, $5, 8 Canada, $9 or something a month, right? And why are you paying that every single month? You're paying it because Netflix is continuing to create value. New shows, new episodes, the new adding to the library. There's always value there for you, so you're happy to pay. It's the same thing for you as a nonprofit. What value are you continuing to bring? Okay, the last question in the back.
How would an organization access your consulting?
Yeah, for sure. So how do organizations access our consulting? I probably should have put our contact information a bit bigger than that's there, but you can just email us info@hivewire.ca, or again, my name's Chris, so you can just email chris@hivewire.ca, or visit our website hivewire.ca and contact us through that, and we'd be happy to work with you. We work with organizations, big and small, for government, for profit, for nonprofits. We'd be happy to chat. We also do a whole series of workshops as well. So for many organizations, there's an educational component. I remember we went in, we did a session for United Way up in York Region, and they, and they were totally interested, and we were able to educate their whole senior staff all on crowdfunding a little bit. So we're happy to come in and help do a lot of that education, as well as that strategy work around developing their campaign. Your bonus question now, yeah?
Is there a cost associated with that?
Yeah, is there a cost associated with that? I would say that it sort of depends on what you're looking at doing. I mean, obviously we're for profit, we're triple bottom line, we're trying to support, but we are a coin operated business. So it depends on how high involvement it is. If you have a couple questions, I'm happy to answer questions that you have, but if we're looking to put together a workshop for your senior leadership team of your organization that's going to take time and preparation, then probably yes, there's going to be some kind of cost. We can talk about that though offline. Were there any questions from the online community? Did anyone online have any questions? Everyone is blissfully sound. Okay.
Someone's a good speaker.
Good speaker. Okay. Well, thank you very much on that note. You guys have been a fantastic audience. I've really enjoyed it. And I'll stick around afterwards for questions.
So just to quickly wrap up, if we will be able to get you the slides, there'll be a recording of the webinar available as well. If you're not sure that you're getting that or you signed up for that, don't worry about it, let us know. Also, if you're in the meetup group, we got your names from there, so no worries. If you ever do want to see this webinar or other awesome webinars that we've done with other awesome presenters, please come by techsoup.canada.ca and click on Learning Center or Resources, and we have recently done some web redesign, so it's the big one on the left-hand side, and you will see them all there streaming because we can embed video on our website now. Hey. Have a great night. Eat the rest of the food, please.
Yeah, I was just looking at
Blogs or something. Oh, it's very good. So you went to
Yes. So,
I mean,
that's why I read
yeah,
it.
I mean, it's also, to be honest, when we were putting together the guide, we also included called the crowdfunding continuum, where what's happening is it's all converging together. The world, crowdfunding with traditional finance,
It does look like it.
We're going away for a CSA retreat on but if you ever read, for whatever reason, it's 5 million or less, you can call us and we're on money.
all of these
So just call my work for
Bring your bag.
we think of giving is
I got one right. I got
Okay, yeah.
but the key
Let's
part,
get
no
me.
matter what,
So I love that this.
I know, right?
Yeah, I love it.
put it in giant flashing letters, which is
I don't know.
Yeah, I have another one.
I'll
So
write
go
it
ahead, write on that one. Write on that one,
Here,
and I'll
wait, I'll
do
give you this.
That'll work,
And
actually.
then you remember my name as well.
that we found, the nonprofits think that the value that they're creating is this, but when we talk to the people who are actually, following or supporting, they say
Or
something
if you are,
different perception of the value that's there, right? So,
or if that's too fancy for you, then that is my
Awesome.
I don't know
Very
what
cool.
will be this sensation.
Thank you very much.
Julia.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Take care.
Thank you.
I did a search on the words, right, and finding out
She said the exact number, but I'm
donation gives, gives an older word. Hebrew and anyway, that's all kind of, but with regards to the law, that has something to do with Latin. Donation is Latin or origin, so there's some differences there, but both say that it's giving